Hello, I'm Jonathan Charnes. Thank you for watching part 2 of my video, The Dysfunctional FAA. I'll continue to describe the accident at Bradley International Airport on October 2nd, 2019, which in part was contributed by a lack of pilot knowledge. Here I have an airport diagram I made, and the plane took off runway 6, as you can see. He makes a right turn, and at this point, he notifies the tower that he's returning to land. And so he continues flying for a while in the same direction and finally makes a turn. It turned out that his number 4 engine lost a lot of power, and his number 3 engine also wasn't developing full power. And he's cleared to land on runway 6, which is way over here, where he took off from. And he reports midfield as he was instructed. The only thing is, according to fly8ma.com, he was at 300 feet, which is about 700 feet lower than he should have been at this point. So obviously he couldn't maintain altitude. And at this point, he could have easily landed on runway 33. It's a nice long runway. I don't know why he chose to land at the active runway. Just because the tower tells you something means nothing. When you have an emergency, you own the airport, and you tell the tower what you're doing. But be that as may, he still probably could have made this, according to the National Transportation Safety Board, had he maintained a speed of 120 miles an hour. He was actually only doing about 100 miles an hour, which causes a lot more drag. Plus, he lowered the landing gear, which adds even more drag. So that prevented him from staying in the air long enough to reach the runway. The plane touched down before the runway, and he rolled into a de-icing station and caught fire and killed about 7 people. The Collins Foundation owned the aircraft. They took people for pleasure rides on it, charging them about $4.50 apiece. And during this tour, the National Transportation Safety Board said that they failed to provide adequate maintenance on the plane. Apparently, the magnetos and the spark plugs weren't in proper condition or maintained properly. That's why they lost power on the number 4 and number 3 engine. And they also cited the FAA for failing to provide enough oversight on the operations of this sightseeing B-17. At this point, I'd like to maintain that a lot of pilots and air carriers like to maintain a code of silence. They don't want to call attention to themselves. And so if the tower tells them to land on runway 6, they'll do that if at all possible. They don't want to make waves and tell the tower, unable, we're going to land on runway 33. That kind of puts them under the magnifying glass. Of course, better to be under the magnifying glass than the graveyard. Just to give you a personal example, I was flying a Navajo chieftain to Milwaukee Airport on a cargo operation years ago, and a landing gear light would not illuminate. And so I asked the tower if he could verify that my landing gear was down. And he did. I landed no incident. The next day I was called in by the chief pilot, who was pretty upset that I called attention to the company by having the tower verify the gears down. He said I should have flown away from the airport for a while and tried to solve the problem on my own by changing light bulbs. I had enough time. Cargo wasn't due for a while. But yeah, that's true. It probably would have been better. But this is kind of how paranoid a lot of the operators are about calling attention to irregularities they have with maintenance. Some accidents are caused by mechanics failing to perform maintenance according to the manufacturer's maintenance manuals or guidelines. In particular, we have Air Midwest Flight 5841 on January 8th, 2003. The plane's elevator cables were not properly tensioned a few days earlier by the mechanics. They had one mechanic getting on the job training, and he skipped apparently a step or two. And that contributed to the plane losing elevator control on takeoff. They basically stalled on takeoff, then crashed after stalling, killing everyone on board. Another contributing factor was the plane was overloaded and the center of gravity was out of limits. It was too far aft. So basically the plane couldn't be taken out of the climb. It had an uncontrollable climb, even though both pilots were pushing full forward on the control wheel. NTSB also said that I believe there was a lack of FAA oversight on that accident. Okay, the National Transportation Safety Board noted that the FAA was aware of serious deficiencies in the training procedures at the facility, but had done nothing to correct them.